All right, welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. Today is July the 21st, 2019. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. In a little while, we'll talk about Sam Gafford, who's part of the Lovecraftian weird fiction community and passed away, was it yesterday, I think? I'm not sure. And really nice guy, contributed a lot to the community, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. And like you said, Pete, there's too many people dying this year.
Yes.
So
too many people getting sick. And
yeah.
I'm tired of it, and I'm willing just to turn it all off and just let everybody live forever.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
So,
all right. Well, let's do quick introductions, and then let's talk about some fun stuff, and then we'll talk about Sam. Such a wonderful guy. Too soon. And we kind of have a lot to talk about. There's some really cool things going on. I'm Mike Davis, Lovecraft eZine. Let's start with Ben and work our way over.
I'm Ben Handelman. I just tried New Coke and compared it to regular Coca-Cola Classic, and cans for proof. And it tastes like Pepsi. So don't drink New Coke if you paid your $20 for the Stranger Things box.
I had this figured out 30 years ago, but yeah.
Well, I mean, 30 years ago when it came out, I was 2 when New Coke was a thing. So my parents probably were making me drink it anyways. But
was
still,
it 30 years ago? I thought it was longer than that.
It's longer. It's 34 years ago next month.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Wow,
But,
Pete, you're old.
Yeah.
Like I said, Mike and Pete were in college at the time. Rick was probably in high school. I don't know any of your ages work.
No, I was working as a computer programmer.
See, Rick was programming in COBOL at the time, and
Yeah. John, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure, I'm a crusty old Yorkshireman, writer and editor, and I actually don't like Coke at all, and I'm currently drinking a nice, heavily hopped pale ale.
There you go. There you go.
Normally, I'm the one drinking beer on the show, but I have to go pick up my wife later. So sadly, John had to step in for me.
And that's true. And also, Kelly Young is out of town, couldn't make it today. Usually he's drinking, whiskey, something like that. Pete, you want to introduce yourself?
No, not really.
All right. Rick?
Rick Lay, I was 30 years old when New Coke came.
Heather? No, I'm not coming back to you, Pete.
If you don't know who I am by now,
right?
You don't know me by now.
It could be someone out there, their first show.
And then they won't ever come back. We don't need them.
Oh my God. Pete does not speak for me, audience.
You want to kill our ratings?
Okay, Heather Landry. I'm wearing an obnoxious shirt that's actually my husband's. It has two bees saying boo to each other. So Scary. If you guys can figure that out, kudos to you.
I've already figured it out.
Oh, good man. And I'm an artist. Yeah. I'm an artist. My site's at sandpaperdaisy.com. Pleased to meet you.
Sandpaperdaisy.com. Keelan Patrick Burke was going to be on the show today, but his girlfriend is having some serious health issues. And so he and I are going to figure out a time a couple of months from now to get him back on. All right. Before we go to the headlines, Jeffrey Thomas has a new book coming up called The Unnamed Country. I believe, it's from Word Horde, and it's coming out this October. So I know there's a lot of Jeffrey Thomas fans out there listening. Keep your eye on that. Pre-order it if you can. Word Horde, it's probably on Word Horde's website, and it's called The Unnamed Country. So I don't know what my voice is doing today. I've been sick. So Pete, you're in charge. Take over.
What? Oh, okay.
Never mind. But you can tell us you can tell us about Stephanie.
Stephanie. So somebody mentioned on some Facebook Lovecraft thing that they had watched Stephanie and they found it to be Lovecraftian. So I'm alone right now in the house, and I have been for several days, and I will be for several more. So I'm getting to do all the things that I don't normally get to do, which including watching lots of horror movies. So like I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I put on a horror movie and I just watch it all day. And yes, so I've seen a lot of stuff.
Let freedom ring, man.
That's right, right? So I watched Stephanie. And Stephanie starts off as a kind of weird little ghost story almost. There's a little girl in a house without her parents. There's still power and television, and she's watching, and there's news about entities breaching into the world. And then there are like events that suggest that the house is haunted. And it is not haunted. It is something far worse. And it is a little slice of cosmic horror.
Okay, little slice of cosmic horror. Do you recommend the movie? Is it a good
I
movie?
really enjoyed it. I kind of figured it out before the big reveal, but that's because I'm kind of I think about where writers go, and
Is this a movie or a miniseries?
It's a movie. I can think it's about an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Did you say it's on Netflix?
It's on Netflix.
Okay. All right. I'll check that out.
And it actually, I was surprised. I'd never heard of it before, but it actually has some decent production values, and it has minimal special effects, but the special effects it has are pretty decent.
Okay. All right. Who saw the Picard trailer?
I did.
What do you think, Rick? I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, I'm dying to find out what caused him to retire from Starfleet. For those of you who haven't, well, I'll spoil it. He's gone back to that winery that his family owned, and he's resigned from being an admiral at Starfleet.
And he's no longer in charge of running Atlantis?
He's not running anything.
Okay.
He's retired. Well, the trailer, it's a great trailer, and it really doesn't really tell you anything much about the plot, which is a good thing in trailers, I think. Too many trailers spoil things that they shouldn't spoil.
All you know is that something horrible happened.
Well, in the new one, it does show him with like a new crew, and they're protecting a girl of some sort. And,
yeah.
I mean, it's a 2-minute trailer, so sorry if I'm spoiling this for people, but I'm spoiling it because it's 2 minutes. 7 of 9 shows up. There's a Borg cube of some sort.
Yeah. Well, I don't believe that there's a such thing as spoiling a trailer. So
yeah. But he does have sort of a Data flashback.
Yeah.
And it implied in this trailer, it implied that the reason he retired was not Romulus blowing up, but it implied that he retired because of what happened with Data.
And I'll go to you, Rick. I just have to say real quick that I saw that movie in the theater, Star Trek Nemesis, and when Data saved his life, and he just quietly says goodbye to Picard, it's a really heart-wrenching scene. At least it was to me. So, Rick, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, is this the trailer they released at Comic-Con? Because I just watched the trailer they have on the...
This trailer came out yesterday. I'll post the link in the chat. And as I said, it's about 2 minutes. It sort of covers that initial, he's at the winery and someone's talking to him. But then it shows him with there's some girl that comes to him. They sort of imply she's important, but don't really say anything.
Needs to be protected, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a crew with a bunch of Vulcans. There's 7 of 9 shows up with Jerry Ryan looking a lot better than she did on Bosch. And there was a Borg cube being built. And I mean, it's not a lot, but it gives you the impression that Picard is sort of he pulled away 20 years earlier, and he's sort of I can't remember the line. It's something like, "What do you think you're doing, Picard? Saving the world again," or something like that. And it was I don't know, because I grew up with Next Generation. It's sort of hard to watch this trailer objectively. Like all I could think was like nostalgia, and they have like the little undertones from the theme playing at the end of it, and all I know is CBS All Access will be getting my money again for 2 months or however long it runs.
But all these characters are Borg connected, aren't they?
Yeah.
If you think they've all been through transformation, Data having his skin changed to feel by the Borg Queen, and 7 of 9, and Picard as locutor or whatever it was. So they've all gone through Borg transition. Is that the key?
Oh, that actually may be it. I don't know.
I've also read just a little bit about it, and it acknowledges the Star Trek 2009 movie. I mean, Romulus is destroyed. So yeah, I thought that was kind of a neat acknowledgement, that they didn't ignore the Kelvin timeline. It's referenced just a tiny bit. So anyway, I'm very excited about it. I do have CBS All Access because my wife watches a lot of CBS shows. So Avengers, highest grossing film of all time, just beat Avatar. So
yay.
Mm-hmm.
But now Disney. No, this is kind of not fair because Disney owns Avatar now. So, if it was a competing studio, they would just release it, and it would go.
Yeah.
But hey,
Disney owning everything is definitely a subject of consternation for pretty much all the artists that I know. So.
Yeah, they bought you recently too, didn't they, Pete? Disney.
I am a subsidiary of Disney and Marvel. I'm actually the new universe. Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody.
That's a deep cut, Pete. I don't think people are going to get the reference there. You'll have to.
Okay, female Thor. Go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, this kind of ties into Thor. One thing I learned because of all the things on YouTube about Avengers is that in the comics, Conan the Barbarian can lift Thor's hammer. Somehow he is worthy.
Huh.
It was in a What If story.
So I don't mind that in What If stories. You're not saying they did it in this War of the Realms Savage Avengers thing, right?
No.
Okay, thank God.
What If story where Thor goes back in time.
I have it in a box somewhere. I vaguely remember it. I didn't remember that part.
Is this Marvel? Is this sort of the Marvel equivalent of Elseworlds?
Yes.
Okay.
And that is going to be an animated series on the streaming service. With voiceovers done by the original actors from the movies.
And to be clear, some of these What If issues back then were much better than the comics they were sort of doing twist on. My favorite was What If Captain America were revived today? Today being like 1980 or something like that. And it was by far the best take on Captain America of that era. It wasn't even close. So what if, because they were allowed to kill people or change characters, do whatever they wanted, they pulled off some pretty interesting stuff.
Absolutely.
I always liked the one where they had Set come to Earth, Set from Conan, and destroy all the Avengers.
Okay. Female Thor. I just heard about this today. It's going to be Natalie Portman. That's pretty interesting.
That was a What If story, but also more recently
a not What If story.
not What If story.
They made it canon for like 3-4 years there.
Yeah. So Jane comes down with cancer, and to stem the tide, she becomes Thor.
And eventually dies from it.
Yes.
Okay. Doctor Strange. The next Doctor Strange movie is supposed to be a horror movie. Have you guys heard about this?
Multiverse of Madness.
That sounds awesome.
With the Scarlet Witch. correct?
Yeah.
And probably Nightmare as the villain.
Okay.
I wish I knew the plot to that because that sounds great.
Well, they had a massive Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch. I hadn't heard about her involvement in one of the comic runs where she was over her two imaginary kids, if anyone remembers.
Yes. Yes.
Where she was willed it so much that she pretended she had kids with the Vision.
Right.
And
Like
it was Strange who brought her. Sorry, it was Strange who brought her back to sanity, or managed to create some level of sanity.
Yeah.
Well, they said that the TV series WandaVision is going to tie directly into the Doctor Strange movie.
Right.
And that may be the plot line which they'll use in WandaVision.
Interesting.
I like the Vision.
I do
too.
Do you like the Vision that we know or the Vision that we've forgotten?
I like the old Vision, to be honest.
Arthur?
The Ultron's created android who eventually became the good guy.
Oh, see, but there was one from the 40s.
Ah, right.
Who was an alien. And his name was Arcus. He was from Smoke World.
He was very similar to Martian Manhunter, if you
Yes.
read.
Ah, right. I do remember that at one point he was supposed to be possibly the original Torch. The android body, wasn't he?
Yeah, that was yes. That is so. Yeah, the idea was that Ultron used the original Human Torch's body, and that made Vision. Then they retrofitted that, and it was not Ultron, not the Human Torch, but rather another version. I think it was Adam.
Well, what they did.
And then they did this.
No. They did something a little tricky. So one writer wrote it out and said the Human Torch and Vision was separate because they wanted to bring back the original Human Torch.
Right.
And then they had it was time manipulation by either Kang the Conqueror and Mortis.
Same thing.
Who are sort of the same guy if you read the whole Marvel, or two manifestations of the same guy. He went back in time and he essentially cloned the Human Torch's android body. So one half gets made into. So one of the clones gets made into the Vision, and the other one gets revived.
Right.
So that was in Avengers West Coast number 50. Back when there was a second minor Avengers team on the West Coast, run by Hawkeye.
I remember those.
It was kind of good around that point, but yeah, it was the 50th anniversary of Marvel, so they wanted to bring back one of the very first Marvel superheroes. Because if you go look at Marvel Comics number 1, the original Human Torch is who's on the cover, and the Vision story was Ultron's second appearance. I want to say it was Avengers like 66, 67. That was when Ultron first remade himself in adamantium, and they couldn't defeat him, and Vision had to be the one that defeated him because he could like phase through things or something like that. I can't remember. But that Vision back then was a lot of fun to read, actually. And it was like something about Wonder Man was tied in too. And
He had Wonder Man's memories. And this is another one of these complicated things where originally he was, when he was an android, he had, Wonder Man had been supposedly killed and buried. And they give Vision Wonder Man's memory, so he's sort of a scientific reincarnation of Wonder Man. Then Wonder Man gets brought back to life through voodoo, I think.
Yeah, Simon Williams or something like that, was he?
Yes.
His name? Yeah.
Yeah.
Simon Williams, not to be confused with the famous British chess player Simon Williams, who also choice beer.
As a Brit, you're all confusing the Avengers with the actual Avengers because
That's
John
right.
Hale and Emmett,
And let's not confuse the new Avengers.
Heather, Tommy Bennett on the live chat says that your cosmic art on your site's cover page is disturbing.
Ooh, thank you.
So I knew you'd take that as a compliment. Yeah. All right. Moving over to DC. Anyone see the Watchmen trailer?
Yes.
What do you think?
Jeremy Irons has never looked better.
I'm only slightly less concerned than I was after the first trailer, and only slightly less confused.
The first trailer was a TikTok one where they just said that forever, or
No, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Wikipedia says,
Don't believe anything on that channel.
I know. The Watchmen series will not be a direct adaptation of the original source material, instead being, quote, remixed, aiming to tell an entirely new story set in the world where the events of the original storyline took place. The only characters returning are Dr. Manhattan, from then are Dr. Manhattan, Silk Spectre, Hooded Justice, and Ozymandias.
Yes, and if you look carefully at the new trailer, you can see the alien from the comic book in a drawing.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, that glimpse of Dr. Manhattan, I'm hoping this is some guy dressed as Dr. Manhattan handing out candy or whatever he was doing, because if that's Dr. Manhattan, he looks terrible. He looks like a guy with paper mache all over his body.
Let's be honest, virtually everything about this trailer looked terrible.
Oh, you thought so?
I really did think so.
Okay.
I don't know what direction they're going. I did not watch that coming away going, man, this can be a great sequel to Watchmen. Especially not when we have the Doomsday Clock stuff going on from DC Comics whenever an issue does happen to come out. That is actually a pretty
When Jeff Johns gets around to getting another issue out.
To Jeff Johns' credit, the Watchmen side of it is actually really well done.
All right. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I guess we'll see. It didn't wow me either. So, let's talk about something really exciting, Ben. Brandon Routh is going to be Superman again. This is awesome.
So to be clear, what they said is that he's going to play sort of a Kingdom Come style Superman, where he's an older hero that's trying to teach, revive the younger ones, or I don't know exactly how they're putting it. All I know is I saw Brandon Routh and I imagined him in the Kingdom Come costume. I'm hoping they dye the sides of his hair white, even though he's only 30 or something, because he was 15 when he did that movie. I don't know. The cast of that movie was so young.
But this is going to be in this year's crossover event, right?
Yeah, the Crisis on Infinite Earth.
And they're going to have both their Superman and Brandon Routh in
right. And so what's going to happen? Are the Legends going to bow out again this year?
Well, I can't account for that, but I do know they made it clear when Brandon Routh as Adam met Supergirl, that she said he looked exactly like her cousin.
Yeah, I remember that.
So
I just thought that was kind of an end joke.
Yeah. So honestly, I don't even care about any of that. I don't care about the rest of the CW universe.
I don't either. All I watch anymore is the crossovers. That's it.
So as long as they have Brandon Routh in it as Kingdom Come Superman, and I can just pretend in my head that this is the eventual fate of the Christopher Reeve Superman, that's all I care about.
All kidding aside, I really did think, I've always felt since I saw the movie for the first time, that Brandon Routh did a great job as Superman. He really did. And he was pretty good at channeling Christopher Reeve, but he also had this sort of added element just under the surface of sadness, if you know what I mean. Feeling kind of apart from the human race. And then finding out at the end of the movie he's not as alien as he thought he was. I thought he did a great job. So
I agree. I thought Brandon Routh was amazing as a Christopher Reeve style Superman. Unfortunately, not the rest of the movie was that good. And there were scenes with the plane in the trailer that were just. I remember watching that trailer and just being blown away. And then I remember And I remember watching it in theaters, and it was oh great, the bring Lex Luthor back. Okay, that's fine. And then the plot was Superman versus a rock, and I don't think that Kate Bosworth was a great Lois Lane.
Oh no, that was a terrible
she was literally like 20 years old, and she looked like she could have been Margot Kidder's daughter.
You know why she was playing Lois Lane, because Kevin Spacey suggested her. He really wanted her in the movie. That's what I heard.
I mean, she's a decent actor. It's just that was not the role she belonged in.
No, she seemed very petulant, I guess.
And this idea about her being married and having a kid, but it's really Superman's kid and all that stuff, I don't think they pulled it off real well. But Brandon Routh was amazing. And I remember the one thing is being just, because people forget, this movie also made a lot of money. It was very profitable. But it was so underwhelming as far as the critics went that by the time it hit DVD, it didn't sell very good. And that's when they decided to go with the, and then they put it on hold, and then the Marvel stuff started coming out a couple years about that point when they were trying to decide on a new film. And that's why they went with Man of Steel instead.
I did like the movie. It could have been better, yes, but I did like the movie. That scene where he's saving the airplane and the other wing gets ripped off the plane. He doesn't even bother to go around. He flies right through it. That was just an amazing scene. Love that airplane rescue scene. So,
yeah, that may be one of the best Superman scenes ever in film.
Yeah.
But as I said, the rest of that movie, I just felt like, and I know some of it was that weird Bryan Singer stuff going on at the time, and how he was sort of there was a bunch of drama because of how he quit X-Men and all the studio stuff going on, and that's where some of the lawsuits actually came from this production. But the other thing I remember not liking is the boots on Superman's costume. It really threw me off. And every time he was on scene, it made me think of Peter Pan because the boots are short and kind of flared. And but other than that, I mean, Brandon Routh was amazing. And again, like, I would love to see him in a Kingdom Come costume as kind of like the older veteran Superman that's,
Yeah.
My only problem there is they've already in Supergirl portrayed Superman that way. That he's passing on the torch, that he's sort of guiding, and so I don't know exactly how they make that work if they're both that way.
I hope they do it right, but I will tell you this. I will agree with you that I don't watch Arrow. I don't want to watch The Flash anymore. I haven't seen Legends in a while, and they're just they've gotten boring. But the crossover events, I watch them every year. They're usually pretty good. So I'm hoping this one is good as well, especially with Brandon Routh in a Superman costume. Have you guys seen the trailer for The Boys?
Nope.
The Boys is an upcoming July. I think it comes out July 26th, and it's basically superheroes, and they're not very nice. The Justice League of sorts, whatever they are, they're just assholes, and I don't know how to explain this movie very well. You have to see the trailer, but it just looks fantastic.
They behave like a bunch of jerks, it looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's another group that's of lesser heroes or who are going to make them regret their actions.
So this comes. This is based on a Garth Ennis comic book from the early to mid 2000s, and that was sort of an era of, hey, traditional superheroes are lame. We're going to be edgy and show how they're all really jerks, and put them in their place. And it wasn't even the first series that Garth Ennis wrote that had that kind of take, but it's sort of in line with how some of the aesthetic of the Ultimates was done. It's in line with how
Rick Veitch's Rat Pack.
Yeah, exactly. Warren Ellis had a series that sort of was also this take on superheroes. There was this period of time, and I remember specifically the one that broke the trend was actually Alan Moore. His probably last good work was he came out with Top 10 because he felt that people went too far in sort of like that idea that really started with Squadron Supreme and then carried forward into Watchmen, that superheroes aren't as good as you think they are. They're really, like we need to deconstruct them and show that they're human, and then taking it too far and all superheroes are jerks.
Well, this one they seem to be complete assholes. There's a review.
There's literally no good superheroes. Literally.
Yeah.
There's a review at Bloody Disgusting that says they've seen it and says it's just fantastic. So I can't wait to see it.
I haven't seen the show, obviously, but I know that the comic book was like as edgy could be. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I'm too old for that kind of like fiction, to be honest. Like where it's just not. It's jokes I'd seen in comic books for 10 years leading up to that, just sort of played out. The cast looks great. I mean, I'm a huge Carl Urban fan, but
he looks great.
John, there was a comic that came out in the 80s. It was British. The main hero was dressed in black as a policeman. And he was the enforcer in a world full of superheroes.
I don't remember that. I've just read Top 10 again, but I don't remember a British one in black. Can't remember the name at all.
I want to say no, I can't. And it's Major. No, you know what? It's in my box of favorite comics. I'll have to pull it out.
I'll have to look that up. I picked up Top 10, the whole lot, the other day, and I thought they were really interesting. I quite like that. The whole concept of the entire society, right down to the people who emptied the bins, were superheroes. All of them with, varying sort of weird or useless powers, and just the struggles of a police precinct to do its best, as it were. Quite neat. I enjoyed it.
I love Top 10. And the other series I was trying to think of was The Authority by Warren Ellis. That was the one. Where it's not that it's necessarily a bad series, but it's the idea that like the traditional superheroes are weak, they failed, and these more edgy heroes or anti-heroes are gonna step in and fix it. But Top 10, was sort of a response to those kind of stories. It reminded me a lot of sort of the fun 50s Superman stuff where you get sort of crazy ideas. Some of the characters in Top 10 are awesome. I really feel that was Alan Moore's last, like, hey, I still enjoy writing comic books. Pretty much everything after that I can't recommend, but
is it possibly Manchester Black?
Manchester Black was the character from the not the Authority, from the Superman take on the Authority.
Okay.
In its Action Comics 725. So this was also part of that sort of pushback against the edgy anti-heroes. Yeah. So in Superman, the writer Joe Kelly, because DC owned the Authority. They owned Wildstorm at the time. So they did their take on the Authority against Superman, where they would come in to stop a threat, but like millions would die in sort of the...
Yeah, they did an animated movie.
And so Manchester Black was his equivalent for Jenny Sparks, I think was her name. But sort of that ran the group. And they did it's a single issue, and it does a really good job of showing why Superman, as cheesy as he may seem, is actually like, that's not a bad thing. He's this really interesting character that does things a certain way because he can. This was, I would say the early to mid 2000s were not a great time to be a comic book fan.
The great thing about Top 10, which particularly as a Brit, was that the toy box, the girl who was the sort of lead looking, that is such a standard from 60s and 70s British weekly comics. The idea that she's got this box with lots of little mechanics, and they used to do loads of these strip stories about so-and-so Danny was the luckiest boy in the world because he had a robotic army, they had little robot men or whatever. And it's just, I don't know whether that was, I suspect it must have been a bit of a piss take on Alan Moore's behalf, because he must have read that stuff. And I remember buying those comics for threepence in the 70s, and they were just like, a little boy. Well, it was always a little boy, and his grandfather or some lunatic uncle or someone had left him a biscuit box full of magical toys who would suddenly rush out and stop people from burgling the local post office. So, to take it to, I love the use of Toy Box as the lead-in character.
The thing about Superman being cheesy, sure, but the thing about most versions of Superman is that he honestly tries to do the right thing. As outdated as some people may find it, that's his goal, always to do the right thing. And so, is anybody watching Black Spot on Netflix?
I just finished the second season.
I'm about to finish the first season.
Okay. Finishing the first season will gain you nothing.
What does that mean?
I have finished the second season, and I know now less than I knew when I started the series.
Oh boy! Do you recommend it or no?
If you were a fan of Twin Peaks,
yeah, the first season anyway.
Yes, then you will enjoy Black Spot. In fact, the more I watch it, the more it reminds me of Twin Peaks because it's an isolated community. There's a defunct logging mill. There's an investigator who's come to investigate murders. There's a dysfunctional police force. It is just I'm just waiting for one person to say, "Damn fine cup of coffee."
I'm about to.
My wife loved it, absolutely loved it. She watched both series through, and she thought it was fantastic. And yes, there are Twin Peaks sort of echoes, but it's got a feel. It's a French-Belgian production, which threw me completely because in the coffee bar or whatever it is, they have like American music playing and everything. Yeah. And I thought for a minute it was maybe French-Canadian, but no, it's a European production, and it's got a mood, and it hovers between that touch of the supernatural and the forest as an entity and so on. So I've highly recommended.
I love that what you just said about the forest as an entity. And I'm about to blaspheme. I think it does Twin Peaks better than Twin Peaks did. It's more entertaining, especially once you get past the first season.
I've got to tell you guys just a real funny, quick thing related to Twin Peaks that just happened. Okay, so Redbubble, which is this print-on-demand site that a lot of artists like to use, to put our art on T-shirts and stuff. People can buy them all over the world. Just had a licensing agreement with Twin Peaks and other properties like Adventure Time, etc., where you are now allowed to upload your fan art of those IPs to Redbubble and sell it on there because they'll get a percentage of it, right? So you have to carefully, look at everybody's terms and conditions. So I excitedly read the Twin Peaks terms and conditions, and they have stuff you're not allowed to draw, right? At the top of the list is owls. So it's hilarious because everybody was just like, oh, I can finally put on my owl up. And then all my artist friends were like, why would they do this? And I said, well, because I'm sure that Twin Peaks itself has a bunch of owl T-shirts about to come out, and they don't want us to compete. It makes total sense, but everybody would their heart fell in that moment collectively across the internet at no owls.
That's funny.
So I figured it out.
What?
The comic book that I was talking about was Martial Law.
That sounds familiar.
All right. Anyway, it's from the 90s. Whole world was superheroes and just a couple of cops. Had a very Judge Dredd feel to it.
All right. So what do you guys think of the new It trailer? It Chapter 2.
Haven't seen it. Sorry.
What
I've
is
seen
wrong?
the first one. Interested. Didn't see the second one yet. I suck.
Nobody's seen the It trailer besides me. Wow, this is embarrassing.
The thumbnail looked cool. I saw the YouTube thumbnail. It looked
Thumbnail.
I only saw the first one, but you got to realize, Mike, a lot came out of Comic-Con, and
I know. I'm giving you guys a hard time.
I spent going through every Marvel presentation. So I'm going to say I got Picard, I've got The Witcher or whatever that new TV series is going to be.
Yeah.
What comics did y'all see? The new Creepshow trailer? There's a comic
That was next on my list, Heather. No, go ahead. I liked it. Did you like it?
Yeah, it looked neat. I mean, I was a little confused at first because it said, based on the George Romero and Stephen King movies, but then seems to have like completely different stories. But I mean, that's great, because I wouldn't dare to try to improve upon the very first Creepshow movie. That was just sublime.
Did you catch this line from the trailer? I wrote this down. There are things in the corners of this world that will drive you insane.
It sounds very Lovecraft.
From the Creepshow trailer. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know when that comes out. I forgot to check.
Even though the first Creepshow movie is much better than the second, I thought the best episode overall was The Raft.
Yeah, that's just nightmare fuel for the rest of your life, forever.
Okay, here's another trailer I found. Lots of trailers today. And a headline from Bloody Disgusting. The headline is, the movie is called Daniel Isn't Real. Daniel Isn't Real looks like a psychological mind fuck. Might just be the best horror movie playing at the SXFW Film Festival this year. Oh, here it is. Troubled college freshman Luke suffers a violent family trauma and resurrects his childhood imaginary friend, Daniel, to help him cope. So I'm looking forward to that one. That's the kind of movie I like to see. What's real, what's not real. You guys' enthusiasm is
I've just worked out what Pete was talking about, so I'm in a different zone. Martial Law was Kevin O'Neill.
Yep.
Co-creator with Moore of the League.
Yes.
He had a peculiar spiky style. He did a sort of necromancer comic as well. Sorry, I've just clicked what it was.
Oh no, you're fine.
Have you ever seen that before?
I've seen it. I used to have them. Kevin O'Neill's style is so odd. Sort of spiky jerky. I couldn't place Martial Law, but he did. It was something like Nemesis the Warlock was his series, and he was connected with 2000 AD and stuff.
Right.
And now I remember the image of Martial Law. He had a sort of weird, and he was dreadish, and he had a sort of weird, almost Gestapo hat on,
right,
and sort of body armor.
So like a cop who's gone through a bondage school.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. God. Oh, God, you reminded me of that.
I just assumed that all British comic book writers were affiliated with 2000 AD at some point, and that every British property was influenced by Judge Dredd. It's just an assumption I have. I say that with like 20 volumes of Judge Dredd collections over there. So,
one of you, I think it was Rick, I could be wrong, told me that Channel Zero, it's kind of like American Horror Story. It's a different storyline every season.
Wasn't me.
Wasn't you? Okay. So, somebody said that.
But I believe you are accurate, yes.
Yes, I know I am, because I looked at all four of them. I'd seen the first one. I looked at the other three, and I thought, which one looks most interesting to me, since I don't have to watch them in order. And the fourth season actually looked the most interesting. Called The Dream Door, I believe. I don't know if any of you seen this, but I will tell you this. I do not scare easy. I can't remember the last time I actually got startled in a movie. Or, I think there's a lot of movies that I think are creepy and done right, and well done, but actually to, make me jump a little bit, that doesn't happen in years. The first episode of The Dream Door is one of the creepiest things I have ever fucking seen. It's insanely well done. I'm looking forward to you guys watching it and telling me what you think. So
I'll put it on the list.
Do not read anything about it. Do not watch any trailers. because I didn't. I watched the trailer afterwards, and it does give some stuff away that you'd rather not know.
So go in there cold.
Yeah, go in there cold. And having said that, the entire season was very well done. But once you know what's going on, you don't know what's going on in the first episode. Once you know what's going on a couple of episodes later, a lot of that creepiness goes away. It's that whole fear of the unknown thing. And I don't know how it could have been done differently, but it lost its appeal at that point. I did watch it all, and I do think it's all the entire season is worth watching. But that first episode is just a gem. So,
where is this available?
Shudder, I think. And I think you can buy it on Amazon. So yeah. Heather, you went to see Midsummer?
Heck yeah, I did.
You wanted to tell us about it.
Yeah, first off, did anybody else dare? Did anyone else go?
No, I haven't yet.
All right, well, amazing, wonderful movie. Not for everyone is how I would kind of sum it up. I'm trying to see what I can say about it to y'all without getting real spoilery. One thing that I thought was really effective about it was, okay, so obviously they go into an isolated village, right? I mean, I'm not spoiling anything by saying that. I've never had such a sense of exactly how crass and boorish we must seem going into like a closed off community and just doing stuff like, vaping or, peeing on something you shouldn't or saying a cuss word. But I felt physically hurt by whenever, these younger kids came in to just kind of gape at this isolated community. And I felt the, revulsion that the villagers must have felt. And they're just literally just acting like anybody. But I could feel exactly how offensive it had to have been. So the horrible thing was that I identified with the villagers, and they were, this is not a happy movie, and perhaps the people in it who go visit them aren't happy afterwards. But I could identify with it, and that made it much worse because I understood why the villagers did the things that they did to the people. And that's a really horrible, horrible feeling to have when you're watching a movie. And all the visuals are beautiful and gorgeous, beautiful pastoral scenes, sun-drenched days, flowers. But it's like juxtaposed against horrible, visceral, meaty images every once in a while that are just every once in a while enough to be brutal. They remind you of one of those beautiful Memento Mori paintings where you have beautiful fruit and everything and flowers, and then suddenly there's like rotten meat in the corner or a skull or something like that. And like beautiful pastoral instrumental music as a backdrop for the things that are happening. So it's a really wonderful movie, but it's quite brutal and it will get inside you. So take heed is my advice.
One criticism I heard of the movie was that it was a little slow in the beginning.
Some people, I understand how people might say that. I guess I'm just more patient than a lot of my buddies because I really didn't feel that, and I felt that the beginning was absolutely necessary to make it more brutal and make you understand better the motivations of, say, the main character, the lady. But I have heard that, and I could see where some people might think that. I was fine with the pacing, but
one of the actors in it, I think it's the main male lead, is Jack Raynor, who's in Strange Angel on CBS All Access.
Mm-hmm. He did well. He had a tough role, but yeah, he had to play somebody who you would understand why the thing that happened to him happened, and that's really hard because he's also this, sweet, relatively innocent, typical brainless young man, but you have to understand why they chose him for his role in the climax of the movie.
What accent did he use in the movie? Because he's not American. I think he's either Australian or British.
He did real good having just a blando American accent.
Yeah.
Just sounded utterly normal American college student dude.
It's probably the same voice he used in Strange Angel.
Mm.
You know, Heather, you and I discussed this over email that I like. I'm sure this is a fantastic movie. I may not see it because, you know, I like this quiet horror, ghost stories, Lovecraftian horror, like Absentia, that sort of thing. I don't like body horror. I remember a scene from Last of the Mohicans where they tied this guy up and put him in a burlap bag, or not burlap, but something. And they placed him over a fire and cooked him alive, just slowly enough so that he didn't die right away. It took hours. And I think it was Last of the Mohicans. And
yeah, they did that. I think his name was Duncan, but I think they did that to the young man who was in love with, oh God, I can't remember her name, the main lady, and who nobly sacrificed himself instead of her. But yeah, they burned him alive. They did. And,
yeah, he was burnt at a stake, I think.
mm-hmm.
But somebody else was just like cooked alive. And that stuck with me for years. I mean, I just, you know, I hate to say these cliche things like, how can human beings do this to each other? But that's exactly what crosses what I think over and over again. So,
Did you see the 1973 Wicker Man? I didn't manage to see the infamous 2006, but I watched that to compare it to Midsummer.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if this is more Wicker Man than Lovecraft, or if there was any Lovecraft in Midsummer or not.
I would say it's more Wicker Man. There's definitely a lot of disturbing, freaky imagery, but it's very real, just people doing this stuff. And there's some very psychedelic scenes, but I think that they can easily be explained by something not necessarily Lovecraftian.
Okay.
My husband said he thinks it's just absurd that they're still all alive and so isolated and not being wiped out by diseases from people who visit. So maybe that could possibly just loosely imply the protection of something that they believe in. But I don't really get a Lovecraftian impression from it, to be honest. I think it really is pretty much straight folk horror.
Well, you know, Lovecraft fans are horror fans. You know, it doesn't have to be all Lovecraft. So, okay, everybody who's been to Necronomicon before, Logan Noble, who's I believe is a Patreon and
a decent writer too. I published some of his work.
Yes, absolutely, and follower of Lovecraft eZine, and he sent me an email, and he said, I just bought my tickets for Necronomicon Providence, and I wanted to ask the Lovecraft eZine crew if they have any advice for going. By the way, Necronomicon is about 1 month from now. And he goes on to say, I'll be attending for the first time, so I'm doing research on all the grand things that Providence has to offer. I know that you guys had a dinner thing in 2017, and I was wondering if that will happen again. The quick answer to that is no, Logan. I'm sorry, I can't make it this time. First time since I started Lovecraft eZine that I can't make it to Necronomicon. But anyway, he says, what are the best restaurant things to see? Where can I snag a beer with you all? Thanks for everything that you guys do. Your podcast is always a delight. So what advice do you guys have for Logan to enjoy Necronomicon? And I think I'll ask this again next week when Matt's here, because he'll have some good ideas too.
Oh, definitely go to Pete Rawlick's trivia night.
Okay, so there is a problem.
Yes, there is.
There is a problem. One of the Mike is bailing on the dinner because he's not going to Necronomicon.
I'm not bailing.
But the other problem is that I was a member of the corporate club that owned McCormick and Schmick's in the hotel. and the hotel changed hands last year, and they disposed of Starbucks and McCormick and Schmick's. So I no longer have pull at either one. So we're scrambling to find places to hold stuff. And Niels has found a place right across the street that is willing to do trivia, sea shanties, and drunken Lovecraftian history. So,
Drunken Lovecraftian history.
yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, all on Saturday night. So it shouldn't be that far away. So that's good. The problem is that I've lost my anchor restaurant. I don't know how you run a hotel without a restaurant. Because that was the hotel restaurant as well.
At least not a good hotel.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I mean, we're not talking about Motel 6 or anything.
No. So I actually have written them an email and told them to get a pop-up in there really quickly because you need a restaurant for your hotel when you're hosting a major convention. Otherwise, all right, so there are a bunch of good Irish pubs all over the place. There's a good Mexican restaurant down the road. If you are willing to take a walk a couple blocks across the park and across the river, there is just row after row of bars and pubs and restaurants.
That's awesome because that's where my Airbnb is. So this is good to know.
All right. There are the last couple times there were also a bunch of food trucks. I would, and this is just general, con information. You're going to drink a lot.
In order to have a successful convention experience,
you are going to drink a lot. If you drink, you are going to drink a lot.
Can I bring up the infamous picture again, or is this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Whose room were we in? I don't remember.
I believe it was Kelly's.
So there was like a hell of a lot of us in this hotel room drinking, having a good time. And Pete was drunk out of his fucking mind.
So what you guys don't know is that Vince picked me up at the airport and in the car handed me a bottle.
That's Vince. Yep.
So I was pretty toasted before I got to the hotel.
Well, you had to be polite. I mean, you had to drink it. It would have been rude not to.
Right. So, yes. There is a picture of me bug-eyed and drunk out of my gourd. And, yeah. Anyway.
I don't want to brag, but I took that picture.
You took that picture?
It's a fucking work of art.
To be clear, Pete's not making it through this next Necronomicon sober either. I'll make sure of that one.
No,
I'm really sorry I can't come. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're still really disappointed in you and Kelly. You
I know.
Go have your own little mini Necronomicon without us, apparently.
I feel ashamed.
And
I've let everyone know.
Always lump Mike and Kelly together in the same group now.
Well, yeah, he is my nemesis. Nemesis. What's the plural on that?
Nemesis. I think. Well, here's a super El Blando generic convention question, but is there any weather stuff people need to know about who haven't ever visited that state?
It's going to be hot.
Okay. Like everywhere.
Yeah. It's not as bad as Florida because it's not as humid. If you are from the South or the Midwest, the thing that was shocking to me was that everything is uphill. You can walk from the hotel to some of the museums uphill. And then you will walk from the museums back to the hotel uphill.
The land changes.
Yeah.
It's very Lovecraftian.
So it's like an Escher thing.
Yeah.
The angles are all wrong. I'll tell you that right now.
I will tell you that there are some hills that are, I think, 75-degree angles. I live in Florida where everything is flat. So going uphill
except for the sinkholes.
Well, yeah, but going uphill for a mile is difficult. But the worst part is coming down. They actually have like handrails to help you come down these hills. And
Yeah, I agree. Coming down off something is the worst.
you're just teasing me now.
Anyway, the very last part of this photo is I posted it on the social media webs with the title of "Reanimate This, Bitches."
You're gonna put it up again, aren't you?
If I could find it, sure.
It pops up in my feed every once in a while.
Well, probably once a year. Yeah, with the Facebook memories.
But
Any more advice for Logan?
Bring cash. Cash is king, and don't be afraid to go into your credit card. It's what it's there for. There are things that you're going to see at Necronomicon that you will desperately want, and that impulse buy is always good. And just pack all the clothes that you never want to wear anymore in your suitcase, and then throw them away, so that you have space to put books.
Yeah, you'll want to have. There's a lot of books that you'll want to buy, most likely.
That is really smart, and I've never heard that tip, and I'm going to take that. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, you've got clothes that you like, but you're not going to wear them anymore because they're out of style or whatnot. Wear them, toss them out, fill your suitcase with books. Nobody cares.
Anything else? Any other advice on Necronomicon?
Buy me lots of food and drink, and I will love you forever. I'm like a puppy dog.
I think about what Matt Carpenter always says is that you kind of want to do everything and you can't. What you have to do is you have to look at the Necronomicon schedule ahead of time and figure out what is most important to you and realize that there are going to be some very cool things that you're going to have to miss because you're seeing something that for you is slightly cooler.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the things, and on that note, one of the things that I learned the hard way is that I can't take every book that I want to get signed to get signed. So what I actually did a couple years ago was I made up custom book plates for the convention. And then I laid out who I wanted to get signed on what and what book they were going to go in. And that way I didn't have to take all the books. I just had to bring the book plates. It seems a little obsessive compulsive, but okay. I'm a little obsessive compulsive.
Hey, if you're getting it done, do it, man.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. But yeah, I this happened because I laid out all the books I wanted to take to get signed, and it literally was like 3 Xerox boxes full of books. It just wasn't going to happen. So I had to come up with an alternative. And so, yeah, book plates was a way to go. And if you write down, if it's doing novels and book plates is easy. If you're doing anthologies, you want to list all the authors on the back. What are you laughing at?
In the Facebook group, the message board, in the comment under where I said watch live at 6:00, and I give the link. Santiago posted the Pete Rowley picture.
Nice. Of course he did, because the internet never forgets.
We love you, Santiago. That's you. Yeah, you've contributed. This is perfect. Yeah. Anyway, I think you were saying something important.
No, I'm fine. That's it. I'm just going to sit back and cry.
I have a tip for conventions.
All right.
I mean, one of the things I found, I used to go to the SF conventions in the early 80s, and I met people like Harry Harrison, Brian Aldiss, John Brunner, L Classics. And the simplest thing is, don't go fanboy. I just used to go to the bar and say, do you want a pint or do you want a whiskey? And instead of being attacked by people saying, oh my God, you're Harry Harrison, he would say, yeah, sure, I'll have a double malt. And that was it. We'd talk. It worked a lot better than, trying to say, oh, wow, this is like a major SF writer or whatever. Let's fanboy on him. Just be normal.
Yeah. It's very true. This shit. What's the guy who was in Evil Dead? I just blanked on his name.
Sam Raimi
Raimi?
or
Bruce Campbell.
Bruce Campbell. The Tin
Bruce-
Kitchen.
Bruce Campbell has a great tip for when you meet somebody famous or somebody at least famous in your circle or whatever. He said he met William Shatner. Here's an example. He met William Shatner, and most people, he said, would go all fanboy and ask him a lot of Star Trek questions. He said, don't do that.
T.J. Hooker.
Because they get that all the time. Yeah, he asked him a T.J. Hooker question about how did you slide the car this way and jump out? Were you really driving? And he said Bill Shatner just would not shut up about it. He was so pleased to have been asked a question like that instead of the Star Trek questions that he always gets.
I met Norman Spinrad, and we had a great time. I said, "Oh, so you're Norman Spinrad?" And he said, "Yep," and that was it. We never spoke again.
Okay. A couple other things. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I really liked Spider-Man: Far From Home, except now I'm starting to not like it because Pete picked it apart and he's starting to make a lot of sense.
Sorry.
Yeah, but I did not like the ending, and similarly, I enjoyed Stranger Things season 3, and I did not like the ending. So
I've been hearing that a lot. I haven't seen the ending yet, so I don't know.
in
Oh,
general,
Everybody
or
has said that
Don't say
general,
we
or
haven't
about
watched it
Stranger
yet.
Things?
about Stranger Things, the 3rd season. They were like, "Oh man, this is the best season ever." I just loved everything except the ending.
Yeah,
Like just everybody.
what a downbeat ending! Jesus.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
The 80s. First of all, the 80s were a downbeat decade.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you saying the ending before the after credit scene on Stranger Things?
Oh, yeah.
There's an after credit scene.
There is. You have to watch the last episode all the way through. Watch all the credits. Go back.
I guess I better go back.
Yep. It's not.
And just for the record, your criticism of Spider-Man, I guess that was the mid-credit scene you were complaining about as the ending.
Where something is revealed that shouldn't be revealed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I was okay with that. I disliked the end credit scenes because I thought it was a cop out. But
oh, yeah. Okay. Doesn't look like we'll have time to get to this today, but next time I'll get to it. I asked a question on several places on my social networks, on the Lovecraft eZine Facebook page, which has a lot of members. I asked this in the message board, and I asked this on Twitter. And the question was, what is the scariest and or creepiest scene you've ever read in a book? And I had some really great answers, and I'd like to go through them and read them, because not all of them, but there's some really great answers in some books that I want to check out because of it. That said, we won't have time for that today, so I'll get to that next week. John, would you, for those who don't know out there listening, could you please explain? Sam Gafford just died, unfortunately. Really talented and really nice guy. And could you explain for those who don't know how Sam was part of the Lovecraftian and weird fiction community and what he contributed to it?
Sure. In fact, it's hard to even fit it all in. It's
You guys were really good friends, as I understand it.
yeah. I'll start how that was because it makes more sense that way. Sam and I were both what I always called Hodgsonians. I came at weird fiction not through Lovecraft but through William Hope Hodgson. And Sam was a scholar and a gent, and probably knew more about William Hope Hodgson than virtually anybody else. And I got in touch with him in 2014, 2015 and said, hey, just seen your site. I didn't know there was anyone still doing this sort of thing. And he was just like, Sam, he just wrote straight back and said, oh, wow, you into this? What do you know? What you about? And we just started. I've never met him. I'm in the wilds of Yorkshire in England. He's in America. And we just corresponded, messaged, talked from that day on. Lovely guy. And we had this huge affection for early weird fiction. Pre-Lovecraft, I'm talking about. And of course, that whole scene in British writing, 1890s to in the Edwardian period, led into the Great Weird Tales thing. The whole Lovecraft and Orley Circle, Clark Ashton Smith, Henry Whitehead, all the rest. And Sam and I just discovered this huge common interest and feeling about the whole development. So we warmed to each other straight away. And he's been doing this stuff for years. If you look for old William Hope Hodgson stuff and weird stuff, there's Sam's little chat books and almost like, the old style fanzines from the 80s. It was an abiding and consuming interest with him. And I just found a fellow spirit, basically. We did so much about Hodgson together on my own website, Grey Dog Tales, and on his William Hope Hodgson site. We researched stuff. We talked about the origins of Hodgson's ideas. We talked about who had picked them up in the past. And Sam was responsible, with a bit of help from me, for what you might call a sort of Hodgsonian revival. We picked up on all the people who I called the inheritors, the people who were writing Carnacki-type stories, and riffing off Hodgson's astonishing ideas. I mean, his ideas were far greater than his writing talent. And so Sam and I just clicked like that. And we just wanted to do stuff. I wrote 3 stories for his Carnacki The Lost Cases. We then conceived of Occult Detective Quarterly, which we said wouldn't be Lovecraftian, but we were open to and have published a number of Lovecraft-type stories. And then we came up with more ideas. We scrapped half of them. We came up with stupid things, which were, entirely unfeasible. He wanted to do a Hodgson biography. The Eckhart thing he did with Jason Eckhart? Notes on a Non-Entity? The illustrated biography of Lovecraft. He wanted to do the same thing for William Hope Hodgson. It said it had been complicated because there isn't as much known, and very little of Hodgson's correspondence has survived, sadly. So it's difficult to fill in some of the gaps.
Can we back up a second for those who don't know? Can you explain the
sorry
the Lovecraft notes graphic novel, whatever it is?
Yeah, well, that was drawn from, I believe, Lovecraft's own essay. The Notes on an Entity thing. And basically Sam scripted a portrayal of what Lovecraft had written. And it's absolutely fascinating.
Jason Eckhart drew it, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. And it does give you a real feel for Lovecraft's character, better than a number of biographies. And let's face it, there are some crap biographies out there.
Again, the title, for those who don't know, is Notes on a Non-Entity, correct?
Yeah. I think it was PS Publishing who put it out.
Yeah, I think that's right.
About 18 months ago. Great book. Really fascinating. And, we were partners, as it were, in wanting weird fiction to spread its wings. And yet at the same time, we were old guys. We were still back in the fanzine years of the 80s. So we shared so many interests about how it had been That was very weird because we had a love of comics, Legion of Superheroes and all the people they rejected from the Legion, stupid things like that. Shared love of Monty Python to the point where I could message him with one word from Monty Python skit, and he would immediately reply with the rest of it or a clip. So we gelled so well, and we wanted to do so many different things. I mean, one of the last things that Sam said to me was that as a small press, what he wanted was to put out good, readable weird fiction at a reasonable price. He wasn't a great fan of the limited edition collectible books. He wanted it to be available. He wanted people to draw people in, and I loved that about him. He was what you'd call a genuine fan. You know what I mean?
I gotta say, I agree with that sentiment 100% about making it affordable and reaching as many people as you can with it.
He was the fan you wanted to meet, and you would joke about anything to do with weird fiction and with comics and with all this sort of stuff. It was marvelous because you could just let yourself run. And anyway, so we got into that, and he found out that I write a series called The Last Edwardian, which is effectively the entire thing he's set after Thomas Carnacki, the Ghost Fighter, died, because I didn't want to write Carnacki pastiches. But we had a huge interest in how Hodgson developed his stuff, and obvious an interest in how that affected the writers after. And of course, Lovecraft said a lot of stuff about Hodgson, wrote a lot of stuff about Hodgson, but only later on in his life. And he didn't like the Carnacki stuff at all. He misread that. I have written about this at length. I disagree totally with HP on his view of Carnacki because he missed some key things. He missed the humanistic element, which was lacking in previous sort of like occult detective types. Maybe he scanned them and thought, oh, well, these are sort of like okay. But he was, of course, a huge fan of The Nightland. One of the finest books ever badly written, because of Hodgson's bizarre choice at the time of using a sort of faux 17th century language. But the imagery in there is quite astonishing. We're talking about the Edwardian period. We're talking about the early 1900s, which is amazing when Lovecraft was young. And unfortunately, Lovecraft read them later, and so I don't think was greatly influenced by any of the ideas in there. But he was very taken when he was introduced to them. And so Sam and I followed all this through, and we tried to explore different aspects of it. He had his Sargasso journal about Hodgson-related weird fiction stuff, which he did 3 issues of which. And sadly, it didn't sell well. It wasn't popular. It was almost scholarly, but it was bloody accessible, and should have been better known. And he did write Lovecraftian stuff himself. There's his, well, it depends how you link it up, but there's his House of Nodens novel. And then there's the Dreamer in Fire collection, which has a wide range of influences and some fantastic stories in. And he's, I don't know, he was just a terrific guy, as I say, a fan and with genuine talent.
Is there somewhere, for example, every book that he was involved with or wrote, are they on Amazon, or is there another link that people can?
They should all be on Amazon.
Okay. So like go to Amazon and put in Sam Gafford, in other words.
Yeah, he did a fantastic novel, deeply underappreciated, called Whitechapel, which was a complex look at Arthur Machen and Jack the Ripper. It's intensely clever. It has very strong Lovecraftian and Machen elements, and it's also a page turner. I mean, he gave me a copy in draft, and I just read it straight through, and it didn't really get noticed. But it's a far cleverer weird fiction novel than you would normally come across. And he couldn't get the damn thing published generally because it's long. And people say, "Oh God, that looks a bit long." Don't think I'm going to dip into that. But it's well worth it. Fantastic book.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
We're going to go off the air shortly, but you're just in time. We're talking about Sam Gafford. Is there anything that you would like to add?
I honestly don't know what's going to happen. He published a journal about William Hope Hodgson called Sargasso. He had 3 issues. It was really quite groundbreaking, and he was so nice. When we would work on anthologies together, he couldn't pay the professional rate of 10 cents a word, but he paid a penny a word, and that would typically mean an author would get somewhere between $50 and $100 for a story in one of his anthologies. He always made sure they were paid. It would cost him $2,500 to put out a book. And I don't know, I think A Lonely and Curious Country was finally in the black. I don't know about Pickman's Gallery if it's in the black yet.
For those who don't know, Matt edited a couple of anthologies that Sam published.
I'm going to miss him. That's all I can say. Really pleasant guy. I feel very badly for his wife, Carol. And I feel badly for all of us because he's just a nice guy.
We've really lost something. I edited one of the last anthologies, Hell's Empire, and he never got to saw that. He saw it in print, but he never got to see the response to it. That was mostly British authors. Farrow Smith did the E.T.A. Hoffman tribute, which came out just before he died. It's tragic, and at the moment we're salvaging Occult Detective Quarterly in his name as best we can. I mean, that was something which Sam and I came out with 3 or 4 years ago when we said, "Hey, we love Occult Detectives. Why isn't there a magazine for this stuff?" One of the reasons why there isn't a magazine because it doesn't sell very well.
No, he had 5 copies. You can still buy these on Amazon for now. I honestly don't know what's going to happen with the Ulthar Press titles now.
Yeah, I would be really scared that they would just disappear.
We're going to try and do everything we can. At the moment, we've got a rescue package for Occult Detective Quarterly, and we're going to dedicate that to Sam. We might be able to get that going. And as an editor, I'm running like a headless chicken and trying to make sure and see if we can find ways of paying anyone who's owed anything. So it's a difficult time. It's a difficult time. There are writers who haven't been paid. And they've been fantastic. I mean, really fantastic. I emailed all the Hell's Empire writers, and they said Sam is more important than anything. And I was just so moved by their response.
Yeah.
And we had a couple of other anthologies coming up, which, of course, what happened now. I think Ken Vaughan's looking to find another home for his folk horror, New England folk horror anthology. It's sad. Ulthar, to me, will be a huge loss. And one of the reasons I'm trying to do a lot to keep Sam's memory alive is that I think it's sad that we recognise people after they're gone.
Yeah.
But Sam helped hundreds of writers get into print, and he was such a beautiful man. He didn't care if you were well known. He wasn't like that. He would print stories from people he'd never heard of, who none of us had ever heard of, if they were good stories. He wasn't one of those who was starstruck by anyone.
He's the guy who gave me a place in the Lovecraft circle. That's how I look at it. And I don't know, will there ever be another Lovecraftian anthology from Ulthar Press? I don't know.
I don't know that there'll be an Ulthar Press. I think Pete was saying.
For those who want to look it up, you could probably just Google Sam Gafford and Lovecraft eZine, and it'll probably take you to the YouTube link, because we had Sam and Jason on a while back, and yeah, I mean, what a great guy. So,
The worst thing is for me, I'm a gobby old bastard. Sam wasn't good at selling himself.
Yeah.
He didn't put himself forward. He didn't
Oh,
shout about his
he
work.
if you want to describe him in one word, he's self-effacing.
Yep, and he didn't get the. I mean, I wrote last night on Facebook and stuff. I was crying most of last night. I just lost it, and I was also very angry because I'm around, and I show myself off and do all sorts of crap and quite happily go anywhere, and yet Sam should have had recognition both for Ulthar and for the quality of his own writing. And I think it's a shame that, well, you have to die to get this, which is, I suppose, why I'm fighting quite hard to keep Sam alive.
I do think there's a lot to what you're saying, John, and you're absolutely right. We need to recognize people while they're alive. But I do think some of us did, and I think a lot of people knew how much he brought to the Lovecraftian community, to the weird fiction community. And at the same time, I appreciate what you're saying about keeping his memory alive.
Yeah, no offense, Mike. I mean, I'm just,
No. I know.
I feel emotional about it.
Yeah.
And I feel that we used to joke about it. I used to be the Pollyanna in all our conversations. He'd get depressed about his writing and about his publishing. And the fact was that he didn't like to shout. He wasn't good at showing himself off and doing marketing type stuff. He hated it. And, there was such quality there in the person and the press.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get a bit mouthy about it because I think it's devastating. I think it's absolutely devastating. I've lost a friend, and I feel that part of the weird fiction field for me has been spoiled at the loss of him. I actually feel quite that it's not as much fun anymore.
Pete?
Yeah, well, no. Look, Dreamer and Fire is a magnificent collection. The House of Nodens, a wonderful Lovecraftian novel. If those had been the only things he had ever done, it would have been enough.
Yeah.
But he did so much more. And like John said, he published a lot of people that had never been published before or didn't have a big following. He didn't care. One of the reasons, I wrote stories for Matt and Sam for Matt's 2 anthologies because I knew that the product that they were going to put out was going to be quality product. It's hard to deal with the loss of somebody that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And here's a guy who had been in the field for a long time, quietly, who exploded in the last couple of years, and was essentially didn't believe that he was doing anything worthwhile. And and John talks about how he had self-doubts about his writing, and it's true. I was Facebook friends with him. I saw all that. What I also saw was that Sam persevered through it, got the work done, and got it out there.
Right.
And it was well received. It was a quality product. And this is a guy who was gonna do something. And if he did it already, but he was going to do something more. I'd like to know what he was working on that we don't know about.
We talked about a few things, but I don't think I can say anything. I mean, for God's sake, he was younger than me. Day before his heart attack, we were chatting about spreading the word about Ulthar and, making more of a show of how I was trying to persuade him to make more a show of his back catalogue and how much they'd achieved. And this was probably hours before his heart attack, and it's just, it's heartrending to be talking to someone and then they're gone.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't put a happy spin on that.
No, I understand. I just appreciate you coming on the show and talking about him and maybe there's people out there who aren't aware of them that are aware of them now. So yeah, I appreciate that, John.
It's no problem. I hope so.
There is no happy spin to put on it. You're right. I mean, death isn't fun. Losing people is not fun.
Yeah. I do feel things are slightly spoiled, and I do feel alone. On the other hand, we've had a huge surge of support, and I'm bloody sure I'm going to keep Sam's name flying. So
yeah,
I feel good about that.
Pete and I were talking a little earlier about that we've lost a lot of good people this year.
Hell yeah.
Sam just now.
Willem
Pugmire. Stan Sargent, I think, was last year. Edward B. Berglund.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Am I forgetting anyone?
Well, I don't know. I mean, trouble is I'm not sure. Pete may have said something earlier. There's a hell of a lot of people ill. I mean, I don't know if you know James A. Moore, but he's in hospital with
that's what
throat cancer.
Yeah, I do know him. And
I mean, that is so rough.
Not this year, but was it last year we lost Michael Shea?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Michael Shea and Stanley Sargent last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been rough. It's been really rough.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple of years.
But we're kicking on.
Yeah, we're keeping on, and all we can do is keep their names alive. Keep their work out there, and not only were they putting out great work, guys like Willem and guys like Sam Gafford were just great guys too.
They were lovely.
They were great people.
Great assets to us.
Yeah.
So both of them so approachable.
Yeah.
You meet them on the street, they're happy to chat with you. You say you want to do something, they're kind of, how can I help?
Yeah.
Like I call Mike, he hangs up. It's like.
The other thing for me, which
that's not true. I've got your phone blocked. You never get through to me. Well, go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, I just was going to throw in the last thing. I'm a weird guy. I'm out in the wilds in northern England, and I don't belong to any cliques, groups, cadres, or any of that sort of thing. And I suppose one of the most important things about Sam for me, and to some extent Willem as well, is that they didn't do it. They didn't play the games.
Yeah.
They didn't say, "Oh, I'm in this, I'm in that." They didn't go around blocking people, trying to cut people out, trying to show off whose group they were in. They were. I loved them because I like being me, and I liked them because they kept on being themselves. They didn't do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
They didn't do the creepy. They didn't do the we're going to go on this side and make a big fuss about it. They didn't parade like that, and I really respected that. Sam had friends from every corner of the weird fiction community, including corners that don't speak to each other. Yeah. And I think that's a huge testament to him.
Well, why don't we close with this? Before you got here, Matt, Logan Noble had asked the question about he's going to Necronomicon for the first time, and he wanted some tips for enjoying it. And I thought you'd probably have some good things to say. And I was going to ask you next week, but now that you're here, you could probably
as soon as you find me, you start handing me 20s.
Right.
It very much enhances your experience because then I can narrate your existence. But, okay. So the thing is, when you go to Necronomicon, don't plan to see everything. You can't. What you do is, it's a smorgasbord. You just say this, that, and the other, what I really want to see. And over the years, I hate to say it, I've stopped going to panels mostly. I go to things like they'll have live performances from radio theaters, from the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. They'll often have a play. Instead of a panel, I go to an author reading. There are all kinds of live action things you can do. that are really one-of-a-kind experience. For example, this year, they're going to have the Dunwich Horror Picture Show at Necronomicon. What is that, you ask? Okay, the terrible 1970s flick, The Dunwich Horror, is going to be shown on screen, and then like Rocky Horror, on the stage in front of it, they have people acting out the show and saying lines with it, and it's really just a hoot, you know?
Yeah.
Have a few tipples before you go, and it's even more fun. Okay, go, if they say they're going to do sea chanties, Innsmouth sea chanties, ditch everything and go to that. If Pete says he's going to run a Lovecraft trivia, hey, these are one-of-a-kind experiences. But if you're like academic, hey, the Armitage Symposium, but don't think you can do everything. And don't feel bad if like you bump into a couple people you know or like, and you decide, you know, fuck the panel, I'm going to go out to lunch. You know, hey, you're there just to have fun and meet people.
I was about to say, Matt, that yeah, I love I love everything that Necronomicon has to offer. And having said that, the best times I've had at Necronomicon are sitting around having lunch with other fans, you know, with authors, editors, publishers. It's, you know, just having conversations with people.
You could do that in the dealer's room too. You don't, although, yeah, we want to support the artists, especially like they'll have artists, not just authors, who have like made sculptures and prints and stuff, and you can go pick those up. What's really nice is you never met a nicer guy than Nick the Hat Gucker.
Right.
And he is so willing to talk to you about anything under the sun. You know, oh, you go over to Joe Brower's table, he'll tell you about the sculptures he's working on. You know, he's happy to talk to you about art. When you go to like one of these publishers' tables, okay, there's one guy there, he's constantly hawking stuff, and I give him a wide berth, but I'll only tell you that in person. But there are like all these neat publishers there who are happy to talk to you about what they're doing. Game developers. Hey, you want to do a game with Adam Scott Glancy, Mr. Delta Green? Hey, he's going to be running a table. Yeah. If you sign up in time, you get to sit down with him, and that is a hoot.
Right.
So meeting people is more important than the panels, I think.
So I'll tell two stories about that, and I think, Mike, you were in on one of them, where we just were exhausted from a morning, so we just ditched everything and we went and had lunch at the pub.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, F. Paul Wilson is sitting down next to us, Thomas Monteleone, just all. I guess we had just decided that it was time to quit the con for half an hour and eat, and so did everybody else. So the next thing you know, most of the authors for the con are in this Irish pub. And we're all just laughing and having a good time, right? So that's, you know, so literally you're like looking around and like, this is the brain trust of Lovecraftian fiction in this pub right now. The other story I'll tell is that I was desperate to get Stuart Gordon's signature. And I saw him like 4 times, and every single time I could not get anywhere near him. You know, he was running away from me or going someplace. I just couldn't get there. And I finally just gave up. And then Monday
The real funny thing was at the same time I kept bumping into him everywhere, and I didn't know you were looking for him.
Yeah, yeah. And literally, Monday morning, I sat down with my bags, and I'm having breakfast, and I look over at the table, and he's sitting at the table next to me. And I'm like, Mr. Gordon. And he's like, Mr. Rollick. And I'm like,
that happened to me with Ramsey Campbell.
Yeah.
Except I said Mr. Campbell, and he says, restraining order. Okay, another thing that people worry about at conventions is harassment. I hate to bring this up, but they have a very clear-cut harassment policy. And if you think you're being unfairly targeted some reason, you just bring it up to one of the organizers or the minions, as they call them. It is really a safe, fun convention, and I think everybody's very respectful of everybody else. You know, so I think that is another thing that I really like about it. no more than 1,300 people there. That's still a lot, but it's not huge like Comic-Con.
I'm going to try and get Niels on the show sometime between now and Necronomicon, at least for a few minutes to talk about, what they've got coming up. And yeah, so. All right. Well, I knew you'd have some things to say about that, Matt. So
Are we going to do the prize this week, or do we bypass that?
I think I bypassed that.
All
We'll
right,
do it.
we'll do it
We'll
next
do it
week.
next week. Okay. John, thank you so much for being on the show. I know it's very, very late where you are, so I appreciate it.
It's cool.
Talking about Sam for us. Yeah. So good to see Heather. We haven't seen her in a few weeks. So, all right. Anything else, guys? That do it? You guys are all going to Necronomicon, right?
I am.
Not me, sadly.
I wish. I'm gonna have to make that like my next life goal and make it happen somehow because it sounds amazing.
Matt and I will drink for you guys.
I'm not going.
Okay.
That's a shame.
All right. Well, you guys have
Focus
to
on
drink
next
for
year,
both.
I hope.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for being here. And thanks, everyone, for listening. And we will see you next week.